You are listening to Footy Talk, your place for the latest news, interviews, and analysis from the world of AFL. It is Tuesday, so I'm joined by my great mate Nick Riewoldt over in the States. But Rui, as I say hello to you, I saw you in Toronto yesterday doing something pretty fancy over there.
I don't know if it was fancy, Lee. Just being a representative for the game on the other side of the world. But I guess that could be my thought of the week, Joey. If we jump straight into it, was in Toronto for the Transatlantic Cup of Australian football, which, believe it or not, was participated in by some of the more obvious countries: Great Britain, Ireland, United States, but France had a team there, Joey. Colombia had a team, which was coached by Josh Kennedy from the Sydney Swans.
Yes.
And what the most amazing thing to me was walking around the grounds, particularly speaking to some of the French men and women about how they got into footy and hearing some of the stories about, they'd been at a bar late at night in Europe, seen a game on TV, thought, what sort of sport's this? Researched their local team, had gone and played a game or two, fallen in love with the sport. And we're talking about their idols. Dusty Martin retired this week, a Frenchman told me. I play like Buddy Franklin, another Frenchman told me. It was just awesome to be able to hear some of these stories about people that you would never expect on the other side of the world that have fallen in love with our great game. And good on the AFL as well for embracing it, for getting behind it, and for putting on a tournament for these teams to take part in. It was such a good day to see footy being played on the other side of the world by people that you would never think have even heard of footy.
Did you find the next Mason Cox or Mike Pike or anyone over there that maybe one day could come out to Australia?
No, but I might have found the next Daisy Pearce, Joey.
Really?
A couple of really handy women's players. Look, I might have to get on the phone to Dell and pass on a couple of contacts for the Saints AFLW team. But no, the standard was really good. And I got to the hotel. I was staying in the same hotel as the French and the English teams. And fair dinkum, it looked like a hospital ward in the morning. The amount of people that were limping around, people in slings, girls with black eyes, like they had an absolute crack. It was fantastic. Speaking of having a crack, how did my old mate go?
Well, that is my thought of the week, Rui. My thought of the week for me is my football career is absolutely done and dusted for good. I will never strap the footy boots on ever again. You can take that to the bank. Even the dad's game, if we play the primary school dad's game, I am not going to do it. Because
what happened?
It ended in disaster. You haven't heard, have you?
No.
I lasted 1 minute, Rui. One kick, one clanger, one torn quaddie. First minute of the game.
No.
Like 100%.
Joey.
Mate, my kick came off the side of the boot. It was a shank. The crowd all giggled. They you could hear like a laugh go around the crowd. Shanked the kick, and I've gone, oh no, I think I've actually done my quad here. So I tried to then run off, and I've gone, yep, I've done it, and a decent one too. So I had to take myself to the bench. I said to the trainer, this is no good. I said, rub as much deep heat in it as you can. Strap it up as tight. And I'll see if I can just go back out there and do something because I was feeling bad, obviously. Went back out there, tried to play for 10 minutes, and I couldn't run. I wouldn't have even been able to kick on my right if I had have got another touch. And late in the first quarter, I thought I'm just a liability. So I had to come off, and that was it. Day done and dusted. My kids were shattered. Aaron and the kids left at halftime. The fans, well, they just enjoyed the day. Luckily,
I hope they turned on you. Did they turn on you?
No, they were all pretty good. They were sympathetic to my cause, really. I was injured. I was hurt. I was sore.
So it was a $30,000 kick.
Don't you start. The boys on the Sunday rubber trying to get me to hand back all the cash, but no, it was. It ended up being a good day though, because Castlemaine won and they won well, so they didn't need me. I just needed to get out of the way.
They didn't need you.
The club made
something similar happened to Bucks, didn't it?
Yeah, he did. I think I beat Bucks by 1 minute, or I'm going to claim that anyway. I played 1 minute longer than Bucks.
He did it in the warm-up, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So at least
that's not ideal.
Nah.
Or you know what? Yeah, you could actually go the other way, Joey. You could use this as the impetus to get back in the gym and.
I did all that, Roo. I went training with them. I went down to Castlemaine on Tuesday. I went and trained at Milne at Beaumaris for a few weeks, and I thought I didn't think my soft tissues would be an issue. I thought it would be a matter of how fit I'd be and how much I could run out the game.
Oof.
But I thought the body would hold up well. But that's a good lesson. I'm 40,
Jeez.
and there's a reason why I
Yeah.
was taken last in the Carlton Draft. And we move on from that, and we never talk about it again, Roo. Hey, let's
All
get
right,
into
all right.
the footy because there's plenty happening. My God, what a weekend it was.
What a weekend.
Crazy. Out of a crazy season, that was probably the most craziest
Unreal.
weekend we have had. I want to start, though, with the GWS Giants about how they have been able to turn a full circle. And again, we love Adam Kingsley. We think he's a terrific coach. We saw what he did with the Giants at the back end of last year. But how difficult would it be for him this time round, Roo, to start so well? I think they were 5-0, go through a real lull through the middle, and now turn it around where they're on this hot streak again late in the year. They are looking scary because I still think when they flick a switch and when they play their best footy, their ceiling is probably as high as any team in the competition. It's a pretty good feat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was probably around that time, 5 and whatever they were to start the season that we spoke about. That sort of legacy of a 3 or 4 year window that we spoke about the Giants having back 2016-17 that never eventuated. Maybe we're coming into that now that they've been able to build more role players and get a bit more of a balanced team. But we're back where we were at the start of the season, where their best looks just about as good as anyone else in it. They bat deep. They play a really exciting style. Turning it around, because we've spoken about the difficulty that teams like the Swans and Carlton are facing in turning around a slump this late in the season. They might have just timed it perfectly, the Giants. They're the team for me that if you get them first, second week of the finals, they're the ones you don't want to run into at the moment because they're coming good just at the right time.
Yeah, and a massive reason for that is Jesse Hogan. The form he's in. He has no doubt been the best key forward this year in the competition. What does that say about him, and maybe a lesson for the competition and some coaches, really, when he's played his best football in the last 18 months, heading towards 30 years of age? Like, it's a great story of perseverance and resilience, but also faith from the GWS Giants Football Club to give him a chance, and now they're reaping the rewards.
Yeah, I mean, he was he was a great talent early, wasn't he? And then I think probably written off a little bit through that middle part of his career, a couple of clubs, and I mean, there's a good lesson from a number of key forwards. I think you'll find. Like, I reckon Tom Hawkins' best footy almost came after 30. Like, he just kept getting better and better. The more craft you can build into your game, and I think he's a player that he doesn't beat you with athleticism, pure athleticism like a Charlie Curnow. Hogan gets you with good forward craft, good timing, knowing when to push lead, knowing when to sort of duck back lead, get defenders going one way and come back at the leg. And there's no doubt as well, he benefits from the way the Giants move the footy. I mean, it's a bit of both. You want to be able to win your own ball, which Jesse's doing, but at the same time, you want the delivery up the field to help you out. And I think at the moment, he's kind of living in that best of both worlds scenario where he's getting really good looks and he's capitalising.
You mentioned Tom Hawkins. It was right. It took him 6 years before he really broke out and became a gun key forward. Then, as you said, he got better. I want to put on the radar, I reckon Darcy Fogarty at Adelaide might be the same. He's in his 7th year. It's been a real slow burn. He was brilliant on the weekend, kicked 5 goals, was marking everything. I can see him, the back half of his career, being a really dominant key forward. Tex will obviously move on, whether it's this year or next year. He's one that might go in that similar sort of vein. But you mentioned Tom Hawkins. We were stiff last week when we did the podcast. Dusty and Tom Hawkins had just retired after we finished the podcast. I want to ask you, if you're the Cats, Tom Hawkins, does he deserve a send-off game, round 24 against the West Coast Eagles at GMHBA? And at what percentage fitness does he have to be for Chris Scott to go with him in the finals to try and win a flag? Can you take him 80%, or does he have to be absolutely cherry ripe 100%?
I think he's got to be cherry ripe, and I think Tom Hawkins would say the same thing. I'm not sure there has been a more selfless key forward in the game than Tom Hawkins. We know his record in terms of goal kicking, but his ability to, and willingness more than ability, to bring other players into the game as a key forward. He's always been a great club man, a great team man. So I don't think he'd even be putting his hand up unless he thought he was cherry ripe 100% to go. I don't think he's the sort of player that would say, I want a send-off game, or, I'm entitled to a game just because of the service I've put in. And his his belly's pretty full as well, Tom. Like he's
Yeah.
had a pretty good career in terms of team success. So ultimate team player, I'd be surprised if he was anything but selfless again, like he always has been.
Speaking of ultimate team players, it's just been announced as we go to air right now, very early on the Tuesday morning, that Dyson Heppell has just announced his retirement as a Bomber. I'll get your thoughts in a minute, but I just want to. My first thoughts for Dyson Heppell was as a leader, what he was able to do for that club off the back of the drug saga, to be able to keep that club and the spirits high, and stick fat with the group to work through that period to hopefully get them into the next phase of their journey. I think shouldn't be underestimated how difficult that was. I know that we've got friends that played with him and rate him really highly for just how much he was real popular and loved, and a ripping fella as well. So a shout out and congratulations to Dyson Heppell. Didn't get the final success he would have liked, but he's going to be an Essendon person forever and be a big part of that club.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument that a lot of his career was really hijacked by, those that were in charge at Essendon or wherever you want to apportion the blame. It was through no doing of Dyson's. So yeah, for him to lead the club through that period, it required someone of a certain temperament, and I think he played the role really well. And yeah, I mean, you can get unlucky and you can get lucky with your timings, and when you played at certain clubs. And I mean, he was, ultimately, I think just unlucky that he was forced into a situation where he had to take the reins of a club that was under severe, unprecedented pressure.
Hey, the big story out of the weekend, if we don't go to the losers and Carlton and how they're falling away, and the Bombers, of course, have been the Hawks and what Hawthorn are doing. My gosh, Sam Mitchell to get this team from zip and 5 to now be in the 8 and playing probably the best football of nearly any team, maybe along with the Giants in the competition. It's a great lesson, isn't it, for the footy world about doing it your way. And Sam was really strong in his convictions about how he wanted his team to look, how deep he wanted to cut it, what type of players he wanted. He's been really hands-on in that approach. It's still very early because it is sort of, still got a long way to go with this rebuild, but you can't fault at the moment what he's been able to do in this sort of past 12 months.
I mean, I think there are times when groups, they make a big jump and it's kind of just that organic growth of the playing group, like they mature, they get more games under their belt and they improve. It just happens. And then there are other times when it is pure coaching. And I think this is an example because the players that we're talking about have come from nowhere. Like that, there was no way we were meant to be talking about some of the Hawthorn players the way we're talking about them.
D'Ambrosio is an All-Australian. Ginnivan is like a gun,
Yeah, so put it down to coaching, mate.
Yeah.
It is Sam Mitchell, 100%. His fingerprints are all over this group. It's interesting that it's almost the antithesis of the way that he played and he approached the game, some of the freedom with which the players are playing and expressing themselves. I mean, it's not really Sam's personality, but his ability to adapt and to find whatever way to bring out the best of these young players has been incredible. So not surprising because he's just such a great football mind and football IQ, but yeah, can't sing his praises high enough. You could make an argument for Coach of the Year for Sam Mitchell for sure.
It's a good point. I mean, it's easy to coach players at the high talent. They just take care of themselves. But to get players that can maximise their potential, and we spoke about Ginnivan and D'Ambrosio, but even I was questioning Marby or Chol. We've seen him, but Sam's been able to tap into him, and Jack Scrimshaw's been maligned at times. All these other players you touched on that no doubt have got Sam's fingerprints all over it have been a massive factor in their spike, and they are the big story. The other story, and I'm not even sure if it's got to you yet over in the States through that's come out overnight from Tommy Morris, is there's a lot of talk about Christian Petracca and how unhappy he is at Melbourne, to the point where I think, and I'm sort of not going by exact the quotes here, but that if he was out of contract right now, Petracca, he would be exploring a trade. But he's got 4 years to run in the contract. Now, is this in some ways, I want to ask you, normal for an AFL player at some stage in their career to maybe just question the direction of a club and maybe explore their options? Because I know it happened certainly to me at one point at St Kilda. I know it happened to you. And is this a bit more alarming for Melbourne, or would you put this down to, well, no, this can happen through a player that's played a lot of footy when a club goes through ups and downs, to just to consider their sort of situation at a club?
Mate, I found it weird, to be honest. Like, he's not in the team at the moment. What's he like? Unhappy with what?
We're not sure, but it
Like,
sounds like the culture, or whatever the direction or the culture is probably
okay,
within the club.
okay. Well, there are some areas that I'd be pointing my finger before I went to the club more broadly. His best mate Clayton Oliver had the pre-season from hell. A lot of it, his own doing. The club put the strict restrictions or parameters around Clayton Oliver. So let's start there. So I found it a little bit weird, to be honest. It wasn't that long ago that they won a flag. And again, this is only hearsay. We haven't heard from Christian Petracca himself. But yeah, until he's actually able to articulate, which he's not going to do, what he's unhappy with. I mean, if we're talking about the culture of the club, is he unhappy with the coaching? Is he unhappy with the leadership, the senior players? Like that's what I'd want to drill into, because I think the main talking points for Melbourne this year it all kind of unravelled at the end of last year. We know with the Smith related incident, and then Clayton Oliver's he's kind of the poster boy for it, and I know they're tight, so that's where I'd be looking.
Yeah, it did surprise us. It did come out of nowhere. Really, it is interesting. Whether is he reading the tea leaves of the direction of the club in regards to where he thinks they can get to in the years to come? I'm not sure, but that certainly will be a big talking point. Do you think St Kilda should have a crack if he is potentially gettable and make up for
throw the kitchen sink at him, Joey? Whatever it takes.
Hey, we will take a break because we need to get into real talk, shit talk. If you are listening on Spotify, make sure you hit the bell to be notified when we drop a new episode. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to Footy Talk. It's with Nik Riewoldt, Joey Montagna. Time for real talk, shit talk. We ask some of the comments or questions that have been posed the last 48 hours and get our take. First one for you, Rui. Kane has been strong on this the last 24 hours. It's got a lot of traction in the media. Nik Cox from Essendon is not built for AFL footy. Real talk, shit talk.
Oof. Yeah, it's strong criticism, isn't it? I don't know specifically about Nik Cox. Don't know him, never met him, haven't seen enough. But I know the criticism, like the incident, it was a strange looking incident on TV. The replay, where the head knock was, I'm not too sure. But I'm not gonna cast judgment from an armchair on that specific incident. But to Kane's point, there are some players, and if you played long enough, you would have experienced some players when they're struggling for form. It's easier to be off the ground than it is on the ground. There's no pressure when you're injured, and so some players, I guess, will put mayo on injuries. I've seen it. I'm not saying that's what's happened here, but I don't think everything Kane was saying in general was completely outrageous. So I'll leave it at that.
Yep.
Joey, one for you. The Blues injury crisis, they're at breaking point.
Yeah, that's real talk. That is real talk. It's a bad time to have a lot of injuries to your best players when you need to have everything going right. Combine that with the fact their football's not strong. It's hard to see them now doing any damage in September, even if they get there. They are now a chance because they're playing West Coast in Perth this week. If they lose that, they're in danger of missing the 8. Then they finish with St Kilda. It's unfathomable considering 3 or 4 weeks ago we thought they were the second best team in it behind Sydney Swans. But it might have got to breaking point. I think not just physically, but maybe mentally, it's affected the whole group that they just sense this isn't our year, this isn't our time. And it looked that way even before the injuries really hit in the Hawthorn game. They just didn't look the same watching it live. They looked a bit of a rabble. Maybe this year's going to be all too hard, and it's just going to be another opportunity missed with this talented group. There's no doubt they've got talent everywhere. They're probably going to have the All-Australian fullback, All-Australian full forward, and maybe the Brownlow medalist in the midfield, which they had in 2022. And for the second time in 3 years, missed finals. It's heartbreaking for the Essendon fans. They've just got to stick fat. But yeah, this year it might be too hard for them. Hey, one more for you. The West Coast Eagles, great comeback win against North Melbourne. They were 30 points down at one stage. So Jared Schofield should now be a legitimate candidate for the West Coast coaching job.
He might be a legitimate candidate. Caretaker coaches usually spoken about as legitimate candidates.
Yeah, they
don't have a great record.
Yeah.
They're always legitimate candidates, but they really seem to get the gig, particularly lately. I feel like there was a period where it was really in fashion to go with the caretaker coaches, and none of them really worked out that well. So, look, I think he'll be in the mix, but recent history at least would suggest that they will look elsewhere. Last one for you, Joey. Rowan Marshall, we know what a great season he's having. The Saints should bring in another ruckman to help support Big Row.
Yeah, I like this one a lot, Roo. 100%. This is real talk for me. I know a lot of conversation around St Kilda is trying to land some big fish to help this club and spike up the ladder and get some top end talent. But one thing they can do that is not as hard to acquire, but could make a significant difference, is finding a young gun ruckman that could almost be the number one ruck. And if you think of a forward line next year, if they get a number one ruck, might be a Nick Bryan, or they might be able to get a Visentini or a Ned Moyle or someone that's not getting game time, Reeves at Hawthorn, and develop them, because we see a lot young rucks that evolve, like a Darcy Cameron, a Lloyd Meek now, and they become a number one ruck and really solid. Kieran Briggs, when he was given a chance. All of a sudden, imagine a forward line next year, Rui, with Max King, Rowan Marshall as the second key forward, who's shown he can kick goals and got drafted as centre forward, and then Sharman as the third. That way, Caminiti can be trained up to become a proper key defender, a big 197, 198 competitive key defender to work with the other defenders. I think it can make a massive difference in St Kilda, and that is more achievable than just trying to go and get Luke Davies-Uniacke or Christian Petracca or all the other names that are getting bandied about. So that is something I think they should look at doing, and it might make a significant difference. But they were strong on the weekend against Richmond, who, to be fair, weren't much opposition. Hey, I know you have to get going. Great to see you, as always. Remember, tomorrow, Abby Holmes will be joined by Jack Heverin and Nathan Broad on Footy Talk. Until then, enjoy your Tuesday. Thanks for watching Footy Talk. Subscribe to the channel to watch myself and Rui every Tuesday.